Welcome to another day of Ether Raids. This is the last day of Light Season, Dark Season. We're going to take on Kibit for this one. I think the final season, I guess. And we're just going to go with the Fjorm team here, primarily because there's no way that I can tank both Felix and Jimbro here. There's no way I can tank both of them. I think we'd have to use, like, let's say Tamara, the new Tamara that's going to be on the new banner. Not that, actually, I could tank these with a lot of my blue units that I have, like the ones that I have investment on. The problem is that Felix is going to be able to warp, and I can't stop him from warping, which is ultimately going to be the same problem that Tamara has. Once Felix is able to just warp behind you, then there's really no point in whether or not you can stop him from attacking. Although I am anticipating that she'll probably just be able to take him out in one combat, which is what you want, unless the damage reduction from Gust is just so much that it just negates her souped up version of Ignis, because that's basically what her special is. But I think she'll hit hard enough to be able to take him out in one combat. We'll see how that pans out. I'm not like 100% like super duper high on her, but we'll see what her damage output is. That's really what's going to make her break her as a unit. And then also, I guess she has that thing where she doesn't get doubled. But doubled or not, getting doubled or not, she really has to be able to take out Felix in the first combat, because otherwise he's just gonna warp around her. The bulwark won't stop Felix from warping around her and hitting, one of your back row units. So that still kind of leaves us in the same spot where we currently are, which is near save. Although you can probably just like set up your units in the block so that the units that are weak to Felix won't get hit. That's something that I've shown that you can do as well. But that's a little bit more difficult to do. Nevertheless, Rearm Grima doesn't care about Felix here. We're gonna tank this with no problem. I think I would have shown this before, but just to clarify, or just to make it apparent, you don't need Shield Fighter on offense to be able to stop Felix or any of the new units that hit really hard these days. You don't need Shield Fighter for that. But what you do need is Shield Fighter on defense. You definitely need Shield Fighter on defense if you're going to be using any saves. I feel like currently it just doesn't make any sense to go into it without it. I feel like that's where the meta is going to be currently, especially with that new, well, I don't want to say especially with him, he's a whole different subject, but you don't need Shield Fighter on offense. The only thing that was really stopping Hardy Fighter, or that could have potentially stopped Hardy Fighter on offense, is the Pulse Smoke on Ike, or just Pulse Smoke in general, because it would have negated your ability to activate the special, because it removes it removes the pre-charge that's on the special after the combat. The only thing you would really need to do is outspeed Felix, and then maybe live a hit if you don't outspeed. But with this setup, you're generally going to outspeed Felix or whoever it is that's initiating into you, if they survive, or if they survive to get danced or an attack again. So Hardy Fighter is just as good as Shield Fighter in the sense that once you're fast enough to double and get your special back up, you should be fine, as long as also there's no Pulse Smoke, which is actually the direction that I was thinking the IS would have gone to as it relates to countering save tanks, instead of just releasing a whole new line of skill that counters exactly what the weakness of Hardy Fighter was, which was the fact that you couldn't trigger it if you got pulsed down, or you couldn't trigger it on, let's say, turn 1 on defense. So that whole Pulse Smoke weakness that Hardy Fighter had, Shield Fighter does not have that. So even if you get outsped, Shield Fighter is like still gonna trigger. So let's say like you're fighting against Felix, he doubles you, but you only hit once in that follow-up combat, and you're still getting outsped. Your Shield Fighter is still gonna proc both times at that. So it doesn't matter which phase or you know, in terms of like a speed check, your shield fighter will still trigger and you will live. So I gotta say, like, strictly speaking, shield fighter is like 10 times better than hardy fighter, just on that alone. But again, you don't need shield fighter to like really like survive. You can play around it if you don't have it. You can do just as well with hardy fighter. Just bear in mind that you're going to be weak to pulse smoke and getting outsped.
Leave it to me.
And then defense is a whole other thing. If you're going to use hardy fighter on defense, you have to make it so that you can't get initiated on turn 1, because you need that turn for the special, the Pavis or whatever, to pre-charge. Otherwise, you're just not going to make it. But yeah, I think Tamara will be fairly good into Felix. I don't really see the need to change her special. Interesting that it gave her a distant counter weapon. That was pretty cool, I think, of them. I really like the design. I really like the fact that she comes with Lagoose Friend 4. I think that works really well into her kit. A lot of people are saying that her attack isn't the greatest, but I guess it doesn't matter. Well, no, not I guess. It really doesn't matter when her playstyle is really geared towards tanking things. So it's good that they kind of cut her attack and then dump it all into her defense, which is what I'm assuming they did. We'll see the stats when the stats come out. But yeah, overall, I think she'll be a competent unit. She'll live or die based off her speed stat, I think, and how that like transitions into the future, because if she's getting outsped, it's more than likely that she's probably not going to survive. So like, I'm thinking of her in comparison to like a tuned Sita, and I still feel like Sita is a bit better because she can get a lot more speed out of her kit. But Lagoose Friend 4 is something that you really shouldn't underestimate. It's very good. I think in the combat between just looking at Tamara and Sita, I feel like Tamara would probably win because of her damage output. But yeah, that aside, she looks like a good unit. Fogado is probably the unit that, like, for me, stole the show off of that banner. He is looking to be exactly what we needed in this current state of the game, where Shield Fighter is just going to be running rampant on armors in general, particularly Fjorm. Green versus blue matchup. Green versus blue matchup is a wonderful thing for Fogado. So definitely you're going to be seeing. This is he's in the regular pool, so you're definitely going to be seeing a ton of him moving forward. I'm surprised that they put something so strong in the regular pool. I mean, Lucia is in the regular pool, but looking at what Fogado's weapon does, that's definitely something that I was assuming, or I would assume would have been seasonal locked, because it's a really powerful effect to prevent your opponent from triggering their specials, even their defensive specials on top of that. That is a very strong effect. So I think previously I was saying it was only on melee units. It's on, like, for near saves. One of the things that you probably don't want to see, you don't want to see Lucia, even though she's red, so you won't have too much of a problem there. As well as the blue one, I guess. You don't want to see Legendary Ninian because she can also bypass your specials as well. And then you don't want to see, for most near saves, because a lot of them are blue these days, you don't want to see Harmonic Carla, because she will just negate your whole Pavis thing. She doesn't care about that. She's just going to put out all of her damage and kill you in one hit. So that was really, like, there wasn't really like a big problem as it relates to initiating on near saves and like being able to survive. Far saves were the issue. And yeah, I definitely think Fogado has solved that problem. There wasn't like any way at all. Well, it's one way, or maybe like if you run miracle comps, but I'm not like the biggest fan of those, because those are really dependent on whether or not you're able to outspeed your opponent, and it's only like a one-time thing. But for Fogado, I think he's the best unit on the banner. We'll see how he works in practice when it comes out. But yeah, that's it for this week. All right, so we're gonna go into the defense replays here. I figured This week I had originally intended not to make like a full video. I was just going to do an overview because I had no answer to Fjorm really. I kind of cobbled something together and it did fairly well, but ultimately it's not what I want moving forward. So I did build like 2 defenses, but I only got like enough replays for the first one because I changed the other one like late on in the week just to see what other options are available. But this, the concept of this is definitely something that I wanted to test out because I've been saying it like literally all week or all of the videos that I've released this week. What you really want to do is hit Fjorm 4 times or 3 times depending on what you have, if you have potent or if you have some type of catcher ball. So I went with the catcher ball option here to be able to take out Fjorm, and I've given the shield fighter skill here to some of my favorites. Here's Hector Reborn. He is very good, although I did end up changing the attack res form a little bit later on down the line for Mystic Boost to negate the adaptive damage. Now this is the key unit here. Byleth, female Byleth is the key unit in this composition, as well as of course Catcher. The whole thing here works as a cohesive unit. If anything like falls apart, like that's the big problem about catcher balls. If anything is stopped or prevented from working, usually it falls apart. The whole catcher ball and like how it would initiate usually falls apart, which is what happened in a couple of the matches that you're going to see a little bit later on down the line here. And I forgot he can't do anything here, so he's just backing out because Hector into Felix with Shield Fighter. Felix into Hector with Shield Fighter just isn't working out, so he's backing out there. But yeah, what I didn't remember as being one of the key problems with Catcher Ball is that turn 2. So let's say if someone were to try to hit and run your Catcher Ball, if you can't get the units to align perfectly on that turn 2, then it will fall apart. And that's ultimately what happened because a lot of it's so hard to get them to move exactly how you want them to move. For turn 2, you want your near and far save to be covering everybody. Kind of like how you see it set up now. If you can envision it, like let's say someone hits and run, you'll see it a little bit later on, but it just wasn't working out. You'll see it a little bit later on. If they move, you want the entire team to be covered because any piece of the team, for most catcher balls, if a piece of the team is removed, then it won't function to its maximum capabilities, and that's really what ended up happening with this layout here. No Yoon, as you can see, so I was gonna lose a bunch of lift if I were to take a loss, but I got a little bit lucky with some of the matchups early on in the week. Here you go. You get to see it in actuality. This would have worked, as I said earlier, with Hardy Fighter. The problem is Felix would have been able to initiate on turn 1, so I wouldn't have had the special be able to trigger on that first turn for defense. But as you can see, no damage there, but they are now running to safety, which is the spot that my defense cannot reach because I don't have a dancer here. As you can see, I probably should have, like, considering the setup, I probably should have swapped out Embla for a dancer, but I needed to activate the 6th slot or the 7th slot, whatever it is. So I needed Embla, and there's no way to fit Triandra in here, so you need Micaiah because what's the isolation is a problem, or just debuffs in general. So you need Micaiah. She helps out a ton, at least with this setup. And then you also need Baby Dual Robin. You need someone to take out Ike. That's what Baby Dual Robin was there for. So yeah, just running a catcher ball in general kind of hinders you in terms of your team composition because you're not really counting on catcher to kill anything. So it's one nuke that you're lacking, or at least one mythic slot that you're lacking, which could also be a nuke. Hopefully, like, I feel like that's something that they could potentially do in the future. Any mythic that were to, like, let's say, well, they've already done it. They've given it to Hater on offense for Astra. But what you really would want that effect on defense. If a mythic is capable of giving out triangle attack or even dual strike, whichever one, for defense, then we're going to be in a better spot, particularly if that mythic is ranged. I don't think they'll go as far as to give it to a ranged mythic. I think melee would be just as fine as well, but I feel like we need a mythic now with a defense mythic, to be specific, with triangle attack or dual strike. Either that or just give us some more armored mythics. I don't know, whichever one they want to do. But it's really hard to fit the team together around the mythic that's bonus these days, especially when the mythic that is bonus is utterly useless against the units that are meta. So there's that. And triangle attack is something that will never age out. I mean, even though there's a lot of units these days that have reduced DR from dual strikes or multiple hits in the first combat by X amount, even though there are a lot of units that have that, it's still damage is still damage. Unless you're hitting for 0, then, I mean, what are you going to do? But damage is still damage, and every bit adds up. So I really would like them to add that to a defense mythic in terms of just having a defense mythic that can do that would be great, but I don't know who that would be because it's triangle attack as they've been doing it so far is really something that's been leaning more towards the flying trio from the Fire Emblem games. I was kind of like thrown off by why they gave it to Hater, the dual strike. I was like, this is super random. Why did they give this to her? I don't see how it fits into her design in terms of like why is she getting this, the dual strike effect. I guess maybe the 8-headed snake is a reference, I don't know, but yeah, definitely think that's something that we need just to help out, or maybe just a better dancer. I don't know, if a dance, let's say a dance can give out triangle attack, that is something I could get behind. But yeah, overall, I made this change here to give Baby Duo Robin the Celica ring because I realized that having it on Makaya doesn't benefit me because she's basically stationary, and if she can't reach, she's not going to change her range, whereas Baby Duo Robin will change her range or their range because of the rally. Now, as you'll see later on, this is also something that was a problem in terms of getting it to be consistent because of well, you'll see later on what I'm talking about. But in terms of just tanking, you'll see here as well, Hector does very well against pretty much everything. Sharena, the only thing that really like straight up kills this Hector is Harmonic Carla. Just straight up nukes him. Straight up. But aside from that, he survives most things with Shield Fighter, which I think is fantastic. Going around him, you probably want to run Embla on offense, which is what I've been seeing quite a few people do, which I don't blame them for, because I didn't expect for IS to go hard swing into Shield Fighter, Hardy Fighter 4, because we really, like, currently where the game is at, I don't think we needed it yet. It wasn't time to get this upgrade yet. Yes, fighting Felix and Jimbro was a problem because of their damage output, but that's typically on offense that you're dealing with that. And Shield Fighter, I mean, Hardy Fighter itself did fairly good enough job in terms of mitigating the damage against those units, so we could have went quite a bit longer before adding Hardy Fighter 4 to the mix. I think what it does primarily is the impact that it will have on defense. I don't think I guess that's probably like the main reason that it was like introduced, because Felix, like, in terms of attacking into your defense, there's really nothing that can stop Felix from just going all in and hitting you on the first turn and just clearing your defense. Unless you like put a bunch of structures in front, there's really no way to stop Felix from doing that. And I think that's really the reason that they introduced Hardy Fighter or Shield Fighter 4, because you want to be able to survive the first turn. Otherwise, every game would be done by turn 1. So I feel like that was the main driving force for its introduction, but I feel like they could have held off just a little bit longer before putting it out. I don't know what they would have introduced as a substitute. Maybe just put units that could survive Felix in general, so that you can have some type of a different meta where armors aren't the front line, but like just tanky units, kind of like Gold Mary, Attune Sita, the new Attune Tamara that came out. I feel like all of those units would do very well against Felix in particular. But then there's also the problem of like who would be the far save in those situations. Like really the only like tanky far save is going to be no, not tanky far save, but tank buster as a far save would be like brain, come on, work, Micaiah, and you're looking at Golveg as the follow-up. So those were really like the main units that you needed to worry about. And I guess like looking at like Hardy Fighter matchups into those two, there could potentially have been a problem, but just as them like not surviving on turn 1 isn't the biggest deal. I feel like you'd have, once you have units that could stop Felix, who's going to be everywhere. I feel like Felix is definitely going to be everywhere, or is still going to be everywhere. I don't know about now since Shield Fighter is a thing, but without Shield Fighter, Felix would definitely have been everywhere. And the only way that you would have been able to really counter that is to like just have bulky frontline units that could survive Felix. But that's not the world that we live in. Shield Fighter 4 is a thing, and we're gonna see where it takes us. Now, so far you've been looking at the defense that's been playing in the background here, and you've probably been able to identify some of the, or one of the other big problems with catcher balls, which is, aside from the organizational structure of a catcher ball being so crucial to its success, hit and run is very strong, or was and still is very strong against catcher balls, because all that you really need to do is survive. And typically with catcher balls, the save units are not meant to kill, but rather survive, and that's typically the build that they have. So it's generally easy to go in and get out against a catcher ball and then just back all the way up, which is what I used to do and what you've been seeing so far against a couple of the opponents that have won, or just people who have been trying to play against this defense. They've just been hitting and then backing out, which is probably like why I think in particular that the catcher ball meta as it was is no longer viable in this current Ether Rates meta, because of how easy it is, or because of how much mobility is currently in the game. Not including the new Regan that we just got on, or that was just revealed on the new banner, who is going to introduce a new line of skills that allows you to reposition after you cancel, which is just insane. So that's even more mobility that's being introduced. I feel it's a tad bit unnecessary to have that much mobility. I don't see the need for it, because yeah, I mean, defenses can cover like really, really far on, like, let's say turn 2 or turn 1, but do you really need to get that far away just to win? If you're hitting and running, I mean, I guess it's a crucial part of the hit and run strategy, but I don't feel like that new ability that Reagan has really needed to be introduced. I think it's great on Reagan or any units that can inherit that skill and perform similarly to Reagan, but I mean, do we really need it? We've been doing fine with hit and run strategies so far without it, is really what I'm trying to drive home. It just allows you to go that much further away. But yeah, mobility is definitely like where it's at right now, and I don't know what they're gonna do to slow that down. I mean, canto control is a thing, but they've been just giving cav units extra canto to counter that. So I mean, does canto control really even matter? Because now you're getting at least guaranteed canto 1. So why run canto control? You know? So yeah, there's that problem. The chase. And also this, in light season, or just any season in general, catcher balls are heavily reliant on warping. So if your units can't warp, it breaks the whole organizational structure of the catcher ball, and it doesn't perform as how it should. And that's what you're seeing right here. I'm just showing you how it impacts, because as you've been seeing so far, the first thing that's supposed to happen with this defense is that Baby Robin is supposed to rally, and then the rest of the team moves around that. But because of the positioning of the warp block, you can't get in to rally. It'd be great if I could put Igrin on this team somehow to get the +1 movement, but Igrin can't really kill Fjorm, so what's the point? And then, I mean, who would I take out to put Igrin in? There's no one that I would take out here to put in Igrin, so it just doesn't work out. And then I don't know, man. I guess maybe Igrin could take out Ike, maybe, but that's just not what we want. And I think, like, even if you were able to get Fjorm down to 1, I don't think Igrin would do enough to take out Fjorm. In my opinion, I haven't tested it. I'm just like talking. I don't know. Maybe she could. But yeah, that's the third problem about, well, I guess it kind of wraps back into the first problem, which is the organizational structure. It's very, once you break it apart, the whole thing falls apart. Did I say that right? What's the best way? Once you attack into it and you're able to escape, or once the catcher ball is forced to chase you, the whole thing generally falls apart. It's probably the most concise way to put it. It's really built, catcher balls are really built for opponents that come in and sit, kind of like this guy's doing here. But again, you saw Milla there, broke my rally, which is ultimately what happened. He broke my rally, and because the rally didn't happen, well, from earlier on, I mean, because the rally didn't happen, then it didn't work how it was supposed to. Catcher balls are very, very reliant on their organizational structure, and just the movement. You gotta plan it so much further in advance when you're trying to put together a successful catcher ball, because it's so fragile. The moment some of the pieces don't move how they're supposed to move, the whole thing falls apart. And that's really what prompted me to eventually move away from it in this week. I kind of decided that it wasn't the best defensive option or defensive layout for the current meta that we're in, which means Fjorm is now harder to kill because I can't get the 4 hits in, which was the whole point of using the catcher ball to begin with, because you get the ability to potentially quad against Fjorm once you outspeed her, and also once you survive, which are like 2 additional conditions just to be able to take out 1 unit. It's crazy. I mean, Ike wasn't this tough to take out. Like, you have an AoE, good, you can kill Ike. I was generally, like, in the beginning, that was how it went with Ike in specific. But Fjorm, it's really taking a lot more work to try to figure out what to do with her. The debuffs don't matter. She has full no follow-up. She can run Hardy Bearing if, you know, she's getting outsped, if that's a problem for you. Or you can just, like, dump a bunch of speed on her, like ascend the speed, run speed mythics, run drive speeds, give supports that give out speed buffs. There's you can make her as fast as you want to make her. It's insane how high her speed threshold is if you build a team around her. And as you're seeing here, Felix versus Hector here, just not going very well for them. Just goes to show you that, you know, Hector is indeed reborn, and you definitely need like some more. I don't want to say we need it but you'd like to have it, of that Lucia effect in the game to prevent specials from being triggered. I don't necessarily want to see the game go that route because it would... I mean, there's a counter for everything, but I don't want to see too much of it, because it doesn't encourage you to build a defensive. Every unit can just negate your Pavis from triggering, you know? It doesn't really, like, I like, for instance, Bernie here versus Mer, every build that I've put together on Mer, Bernie pretty much wins all of them, especially because she's bonus, because she can hit the quad and pretty much kill Mer like that with curved shot. I mean, even with Hardy Bearing, Bernie can still take out Mer with curve shot. If not, just get her like super duper low and still survive, which is fine for an initiation with Bernie. But then if every unit could just like do that, I'm okay with that matchup being not successful for Mer. But if every matchup was like that, the armored unit, the save unit, Mer in general, would be pretty much null and void. Which is kind of the reason that a lot of the older army units have fallen off, because even with updated kits, a lot of them still lose.
Go no further.
And like, why? What is the incentive of running this unit if she's still going to lose regardless of how I update the kit? You know, that's one of the bigger problems of building a defense. So yeah, I hope they don't introduce that into the game on too many units. I think, from a range unit standpoint, I would like to see at least 2 or 3 more units with that effect, the Lucia effect. I don't know what we'd call it, but the ability to neutralize specials is very strong. I definitely want to see that on more ranged units. I didn't even consider it when I was just thinking about ways to counter Fjorm, because I didn't expect them to do that. And I think it's actually a fantastic way to go about it, because especially how they've designed Fogado, because Fjorm still has DR piercing. I think she gets, or am I wrong? But I think he has like 50% DR piercing, so Fogado will still get enough damage or dealt to him so that he could reflect that damage and then take out Fjorm. And then, as I said before, the green versus blue matchup is favorable for Fogado. So the only thing he needs to worry about is being able to outspeed Fjorm so that he can double. If he can't double, then he's not going to be able to kill her. He won't die, but he can't kill her. Because I think he's bulky enough to survive a combat against Fjorm. And as you've been seeing here, the chase has been the biggest problem so far. This is a really good clear, by the way, that you're going to see here. Again, another Milla. Everybody picked up Milla with High Dragon Wall. And I think I was saying this before, Gatekeeper or or units pretending to be Gatekeeper are like everywhere now. That just goes to show you how good Gatekeeper is, because that's this whole niche and they're just trying to copy it, but they don't do it as well as him. I just want to whisper that out there. But that's another reasons why Catcher Balls are like not as functional as they were before, because again, structural competency is very important for the Catcher Ball to function, and the warping is a big part of the mobility, unless you're going to get +1 movement somewhere, which is kind of difficult, because a lot of the time I was like thinking maybe I should run Rain Snap on Catcher, but then I remember that ranged units don't get the +1 movement from Rain Snap, which is unfortunate.
Stay alive, Bernie.
So yeah, there's that to deal with. I feel like I strayed from the point that I was making like way earlier. What was I saying? I don't even remember that. I felt like I talked myself into a circle. Maybe I'll just start something new. Start a new topic. Yeah, man, Hector has been phenomenal. I was considering running his A skill so that I could be able to counterattack in these type of situations. But I like having the 70, the big number on his health. It looks intimidating. Having that intimidation factor is also something that you want your defense to do. But maybe not too much, because then it forces your opponents to start getting more creative, and they take your defense too seriously, which means they're less likely to make mistakes. Having a defense that is underestimated is probably the best thing that you can do. When they look at it and they go, oh, I can win, this looks easy, and then, you know, they go into it and they make mistakes, you really want to get that surprise factor in there as well. So a lot of tricks to it. But I thought this clear was very good, especially with the hit and run aspect being added to it. These are all very competent units here, and he did a good job here getting through the wall of the defense. Again, Bernie into Valentine's Mirror. Bernie typically wins that matchup. And you kind of seeing slowly the older Farseers fall off. You're seeing, I'm not seeing Winter Byleth as much anymore, because Myrrh just absolutely destroys him, and he can't really run the Shield Fighter build because he really wants to use his perf special. And then they're still gonna get hit 4 times by Bernie, and they'll get demolished on that 4th hit. So yeah, and now we're kind of seeing Valentine's Myrrh fall off as well. Yeah. Now, as to not be too lengthy, I mean, this is already 40 minutes. If you're sticking around here, GG's to you, you're a real one. This is just like looking at what's up for next week. I have no idea. I'm probably going to wait until I can get a copy of Fogado before I actually start building a defense. I don't know how that's going to work out. It's going to be interesting to get him into testing to see what his damage output is. I really want to, I think I'm definitely going to run him on defense, because I don't really have, there just aren't any options that really work against Duo Fjorm. Primarily, what makes her so good is the reflective damage. I think without it, she's just an okay unit. But the fact that she kills pretty much everything that attacks into her is really annoying, because how are you... Remember I said earlier, like, one of the big pitfalls of Catcher Balls is that the armors are typically built to survive and not particularly kill anything, but Fjorm kind of does the job for you, both jobs, which is survive and kill. So yeah, it's very hard to compete against that. There's only like one unit that you've seen so far, which is Brave Byleth, and like any unit that you could probably run with Miracle, but then if you're getting doubled, then that's also a problem. So really one unit, plus this new Fogado that looks like he'll be able to handle that combat as well. So we're in a tough spot. I guess what it also means is that we can probably anticipate seeing the special neutralization effect in weapon refines in the future. Alright, so just before we go, let me just give you a quick snapshot, I guess, replay, I don't know, demonstration. That's the best thing that I should probably say. Just to prove to you that this setup does indeed work. I feel like there was probably like one match, but because of Milla, not necessarily because of Milla, because of High Dragon Wall or Fake Gatekeeper, yeah, it just wasn't able to be fulfilled. I also forgot that Lumera's Schism is so much of a factor in Light and Dark Season, and it can probably be a factor in other seasons as well. So that can completely throw off your Catcher Ball. So I don't know, man, but I feel like we're going to see more Catcher Ball-like effects moving forward, because there's really no point in holding back at this point, because there's so many counters to it, and it just doesn't function as well as it used to because of the tools that we have access to in the game currently to be able to run away. But yeah, this is just showing you how Byleth into Fjorm works. The biggest problem here is the speed aspect of this. If Fjorm is able to double, then this is not a favorable. This is no longer a favorable matchup. But as long as you can get Byleth to outspeed Fjorm, this is what you can expect to see. Especially if the dual Fjorm is not properly supported. which is why I've tucked away Seth in the corner there, as well as my legendary Byleth, because they were giving extra speed and stuff, so I had to tuck them away in the corner, because then I would no longer be able to outspeed and get the quad. And this is where Machaya comes in, and well, you're going to see her do a big fat 0 because of the Ike Ring. I think the other day I said the second hit does more damage, but that was really because of the extra flat DR from the Ike Ring that I forgot about. But yeah, barely taking her out here. But yeah, if she's not properly supported, then Byleth will solo once she outspeeds and is able to quad. Again, hitting 4 times is better than hitting with Potent, because you get the full damage output from the 4th hit with the triangle attack, whereas Potent, you only get a percentage, a very small percentage at that. So there you go. Dual Fjorm is no more, and let's see what we can do next week.